Hi, everybody. Welcome to Grayscale's deeper dive into SWE. I am fortunate enough today to be joined by Adeni Abiodun, co-founder of Miston Labs, which is the initial contributor to the SWE blockchain. Thank you for joining me, Adeni. Before we kick off, as always, I'm going to read a couple of disclosures, so bear with me for a few moments. This call is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be, nor should it be construed as or used as investment, tax, or legal advice, an investment recommendation, an IRA provider recommendation, or any offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to buy or sell any digital asset or security. Clients of Grayscale may maintain positions in the digital assets discussed on this call. Any opinions expressed through this webinar are solely our own and do not necessarily express the views or opinions of Grayscale or any of its affiliated entities. With that, we can get started. I am going to kick it over to Denny with our first question. Can you provide some background on yourself and how SWE came to be created? For instance, what was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Certainly. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure and honor to be able to share the story around SWE. My name is Adeni Abiodun. I'm one of the co-founders. I'm one of the 5 co-founders of Miston Labs. We were the original contributors to the project called Libra, formerly at Facebook. We ended up renaming it to Diem. And the goal was to really build a layer that enabled sending money as easy as sending a message on WhatsApp or email. We wanted to simplify that experience because we realized bringing the barrier of adoption down and just removing the barrier for sending money was going to enable a lot of financial opportunities for the world that wasn't previously possible. Of course, as everybody knows, that project did not see the light of day. Unfortunately, it never got to launch. But to our benefit, we're able to actually realize that dream outside of the realms of Facebook. So myself and 4 other co-founders who were responsible for a lot of the R&D, all the R&D that led to the launch of Libra, left, including the creator of the Move programming language, Sam Blackshear, to build Miston Labs. And the project we embarked on is to go beyond what we tried to do at Libra and build a global coordination layer. Our view was if you enabled the developers to coordinate the actions or the intent of users in an atomic way at scale, you're going to build new forms of businesses that open up trillions of dollars of value for consumers and overall for businesses as a whole. We think entire new consumer segments or even developer segments can be built off the back of just enabling the coordination of user intent at scale. Hopefully that helps.
Yes. And so before we get into the details, which we will, let's just do very big picture. My favorite question, what exactly is SWE? And, can you explain it to me as though I were 5 years old?
Sure thing. So I'd explain it. The internet is great for sending data across, right? Like if I want to send you a file, the internet is built for that. It's done a very good job of making that possible. Now, for me to send value to you, the internet was not built to atomically allow you and I to agree on a set of events, or even my intent to be represented in an atomic way. So what we're building, what SWE actually is a global coordination layer for user intent. It enables developers to conjure up or collaborate a lot of things that users want to do in a way that is very, very easy. For example, if I want to buy an airline ticket at the same time, pay for my hotel room, while also paying for my hotel room, I want to book the excursions I want to do at the same time. To do that on the internet is very, very fragmented. So I need to go to 5 different websites, do a bunch of searches, find who has inventory, make that booking, and maybe I might book the hotel room and lose the flight. But if you had a coordination layer that allows you to do that at scale, I can do all those actions from one click of a button. So SWE is redefining that. It's beyond just a blockchain. SWE is effectively enabling developers to coordinate user intent in an atomic way at a scale that's never been possible. I'm happy to go into the details on the technicals. And I think some of the innovations we've come up with around the object-centric approach, basically the ability to have everything represented as an object, makes it very, very easy for developers to pick up. So if I had to summarize it, right, like internet is great for sending data, not so good for sending value. SWE is great for sending data and value at the same time, but it allows you to do that in a very, very easy way, in a programmatic way.
I think that's a very good breakdown of something that is necessarily very complicated. So you kind of got into the Move language. Coming back to, there are a lot of layer ones out there. How does, speaking more about the ways that Sui is unique, tell me more about how, because of its programming language, Sui stands out. What is special about Sui versus all these other layer ones?
Sure thing. So what makes Sui special is actually a number of things. I want to go into Move very quickly and I'll explain a bit further. While we're at Facebook, a team led by Sam did some research in multitude of languages that are available. And we just found that there's no way we could have stood in front of a regulator with Solidity or any other programming language without being able to give a guarantee on the correctness of the transaction that happened. So it's one thing to do a transaction and it fails, but it's another thing to do a transaction and then you end up losing money. So money is valuable because you trust you can retrieve it for value at the end of the day or for face value of what it represents. And if you have incorrect programming that could cause losses, which we see all the time in EVM, there's always a hack. We think there would eventually be $1 billion hack on EVM. It's impossible to keep secure. You cannot build a sustainable ecosystem, a financial ecosystem around that. So we built Move specifically to be safe. Now, when we left Facebook, what we did is we took Move and then we improved upon it to make the developer experience a lot more natural. The world of Web3 forces developers to think around accounts. They talk about account abstraction. Everything is account-based. Well, unfortunately, that's not how the world really works. Everything in the world you think of, this pair of glasses is an object, this phone is an object, everything is an object. So developers think of objects, and programming languages have taken on an object-oriented construct for decades, and we're going backwards. So with Sui, very, very different model where everything is built as an object. And because everything is an object, myself transferring $5 to you versus someone buying an airline ticket are two distinct events happening at the same time. So we don't have an issue of trying to really line everything up and do a transaction in a sequential way. We can parallelize the whole thing. So Sui allows you to parallelize millions of user intent at the same time and do that without having any kind of congestion. That is the innovation. It's not just the Move programming language. It goes all the way from the object model Move all the way down to the storage layer. That's why Sui is the only chain that doesn't have a max throughput. The more machines you throw at Sui, the faster it gets. So you don't think of a single machine, you think of boxes that go in parallel. So this is how we build search at Google. Our company is full of Googlers, Facebookers, people who've actually built infrastructure for billions. It's how you build search at Google. It's how you build infra at Facebook. You build it to be scalable from day one. And it's truly unique. No other blockchain has that kind of property.
So talking about speed, my next question that I have is a really discussion on performance and capabilities. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that and talk exactly about how fast Sui is? And I did use it today. I used SuiLend, and it was a great experience. It was very fast. So can you talk to us a little bit about the speeds and throughput as it relates today, what you're seeing as it relates to other blockchains?
Sure. So what we set the team the challenge of is we need to make the ability for users to do things on a platform as fast as a website, or if not faster. So today, to do a transaction on Sui, if you want to do a swap, for example, on SuiLend, the transaction will be done in less than 700 milliseconds. Right? We're talking about final, not optimistic, actual finality end-to-end from when you click a button to when you get a refresh. Most websites, the average load time is 3 seconds. So Sui is faster to finality than a website. It's actually like 14 times faster to finality than Solana, for example. So it is a game changer in terms of finality. But the benefit of that is that you now increase the surface area of use cases you can build. Now you can build games that every move can be recorded on chain. You can do concert tickets directly on chain. You can conjure up a number of different user interactions on chain that you generally wouldn't do with high latency systems. And one thing I was mentioning, it's great to have low latency, but what we also get is high throughput. So because Sui is designed in such a way where every object is distinct, we can effectively allow validators to throw more hardware in times when there is more demand for throughput and take that hardware offline when there's no longer demand. That is the only system that does that. But that's how traditional high-scale compute systems work. when in times of peak demand, let's say it's Christmas and everybody's buying turkeys or whatever, you throw more machines on so we can process more transactions. And when Christmas is over, you turn those machines off. So we don't have a maximum throughput. The current production system we have today in SWE, with the lowest hardware configuration, we've benchmarked it to about 297,000 transactions, peer-to-peer transactions per second. Now, we've also shown that with Pilotfish, if you add 7 times the hardware to SWE, you get 7x the performance and 0 increase in latency. So it's an optimal system. One, is very high throughput, very low latency. It is the industry lowest latency by quite a long stretch. It's actually a technical marvel the way the team was able to develop it in a short space of time. But it allows you to really build really compelling consumer applications that don't bring a lot of friction. And waiting for a website to load is already painful, but to wait for a website and then a transaction is another bit of pain at the same time.
So that actually brings me to the next question. What are we people building? How are we using SWE? Who's using it? And what are people building on SWE? Because there seems to be an emerging ecosystem that has the opportunity to be very significant.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. So one of the areas we indexed on when we started with SWE is we wanted to go to a use case where we felt we could show 100x improvement on the competition, because it's great to be 2x better, but really no one cares. You need to be 100x better than what exists in the market. Gaming is the way we went, and gaming generally always is fast to adopt technology than any other industry. It's pushed the boundaries of AI, it's pushed the boundaries of high performance compute, it's pushed the boundaries of memory. It's always been something that's pushed the industry forward. So we built the chain to tackle the issue around ownership in gaming. And I'm happy to say that we've onboarded a ton of game devs who are building amazing applications on SWE. 3 of the top publicly listed companies in Korea, NHN, Netmarble, FNC, NCSoft, are building on SWE already. We had Onboff and SNK already building on SWE. There's a long myriad of, I think it's something like 75 different publishing houses already building on SWE. So that's an area that SWE is actually doing really, really well. And we announced a games console called the SWE Play Zero X1 earlier this year, which is integrated with a very amazing operating system called Playtron. And that's going to really allow gaming to come on a different level for Web3 and Web2 as a whole. The other thing is you have to have a very strong financial ecosystem. And it's one of the things that liquidity begets more liquidity. So SWE is literally top 10 for a chain that's only 15 months old, top 10 in terms of TVL. That's total amount of value locked in DeFi protocols. And the thing that's unique in SWE is they're decentralized finance primitives that you can build on SWE that you just can't build anywhere else, right? I mentioned something around intent before. SWE allows you to basically coordinate up to 1,024 individual user intents or even autonomous agent intents at the same time with a single transaction and one approval, which is unique. Other blockchains require to click and approve per transaction. SWE lets you do it once and then you're done. That's really exciting because now we're seeing a lot of aggregators built in an ecosystem that allows you to do a trade but get the optimal transaction execution and best price across all number of dexes at the same time. So that is something we're very excited about. And another area is commerce. We recently announced that USDC is coming to SWE, and very quickly we also announced a partnership with MoviePass. So MoviePass is going to really redefine how films are funded, but at the same time how people pay for movies at the same time. So USDC onboarded into the movie space, but at the same time allowing people to fund movies that they care about and build a lot of following around things that they really, really care about. I think you're going to see, I don't want to go into too much detail, but you're going to see a lot of really exciting user engagement mechanisms that have never been possible. And I think I'd also say one last thing. The session cookie is effectively dead, right? Being able to follow users with a cookie is one of the worst things ever invented, but at the same time allow the industry to go very, very far. We believe now that with the advent of SWE, that model is going to be turned on its head, and new forms of advertising is now going to be possible using SWE. ZK login is a mechanism that lets you log in just using your Google account or Facebook or whatever you want, and that ties in automatically to an on-chain address that is fully private. We believe that's going to be the new form by which you can actually start building exciting advertising models and new forms to actually onboard users to Web3 that's never been possible before.
And so user experience, one of the themes that I'm excited about, we're excited about, is this idea of user interface and the role it's going to play which is a critical role for crypto adoption, blockchain adoption in the next phase. And so for me, if anybody else is out there like me, you're doing stuff on chain, you're writing down your seed phrases, you're calling up, your relative in Reseda and having them write it down somewhere or tattooing it to like the back of your eyelids. It's a lot.
Yep.
And so I think that you guys have done something different with ZK logins. So let's talk about ZK logins and what that means for abstraction and the user experience.
Yeah, very good question. So I'll go on record in saying, in my opinion, I mean, this is just my opinion, wallets are the worst disservice we've done to consumers in the space, right? Like the idea that I'm about to play a game or I'm about to do a transaction. You're asking me to go and download an application, buy a token, come back. Hopefully you've not lost me by then, and then do some transaction I may not or may not understand. That is just insane. And when I want to transfer value from one account to another, I need to remember some memorable long phrase, or we've just completely convoluted something that should not be. Web 2 is excellent at providing great user experience. And I think we could take a lot of learnings from Web 2 in that regard. So what we've done at Mysten for the first time possible is we've invented a new form of zero knowledge proof, which we call ZK login, that effectively allows anybody with an existing OpenID Connect account. So whether you're using Google, Facebook, Kakao in Korea, you name it, any account that supports OAuth, you can create an account on Sui in a private way entirely. And the layer one will verify your session rather than some middleware. So without any middleware required, I can sign into Google, and just by my sign into Google, we generate a mathematical proof of that account that generates an account on chain. And that means now you can transact with Sui without ever having to remember a passphrase. If you forget your password, you reset your Google account, your funds are still there ultimately. And that's a way to onboard people. So hopefully I'll be able to show you an example sometime during this call. You can just click a button to sign up with Google, Facebook, Twitch, you name it. You instantly have an account on chain. And to add on to that, we've married ZK login with something called sponsored transactions. So it's one thing to solve the problem of signing in with email, but then if you're asking me to go and buy gas, what is gas? What does that even mean? I don't do it today. Why do I need to be introduced to such a new concept, right? So we have something called sponsored transactions where the application dev or someone else, maybe by ads or maybe some other mechanism, can actually pay the gas on your behalf. So we've separated the concept of who initiates the intent or who initiates the transaction from who pays the fees. So it means that users can onboard using their traditional Web 2 account. Secondly, they can transact without ever having to worry about concept of gas. So, and then the final thing I want to touch on is usernames, right? Like the last thing to solve is, okay, so you've onboarded me with email, you've allowed me to transact without worrying about gas, but I want to send money to a friend. Do I need to remember a seed phrase, all these long paraphrases? That makes no sense. So every account in the Sui ecosystem has a mechanism which we call SuiNS, which is a domain name system. So every app can have a domain of its own. So if I want to send money to you, it would just be your name at Stashed or your name at app name or whatever. So the concept now that previously assets that I had were locked within a single application, now it's easy for Web 2 users to understand that I could transfer an asset from one application domain to another application domain using an email-like primitive. So we think that's a perfect UX for Web 2, and we think Sui is very, very well set to have large user adoption just because it's got the best UX. It allows developers to build Web 2-ish kind of experiences with the least amount of friction.
That seems like a big step forward because what you've described is essentially the experience of using email or sending money to someone on Venmo or Zelle, which we are, many of us are pretty proficient at by now.
Absolutely.
Let's do the demo.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, I've got a few demos to show you.
Great.
But they're very, very fast. Can you see my screen so far?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to first copy as a degen an account to this user. I'm going to send 300 Sui. Review, approve, done. That's how fast Sui is. But now I've got some Sui. Let me get a domain.
You know what? Sorry to jump in because this is we're not seeing the screen apparently.
Oh, you're not seeing the screen?
It's showing the video. I think the screen you've selected is actually
Oh,
showing the video. So see if you can switch it to a different screen
let's
that's
go to a
not
different
showing.
screen. Let's go to a different window. Let me go back to entire screen. Okay, here we go. Share. Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Let's take it from the top.
So take it from the top. All right, I sent 300 tweet, but I'm going to send another 300 tweet just so that we can see the experience. So you're going to see the balance increase by 300 tweet.
In what application is this?
This is the Sui wallet.
Okay.
So you've seen the balance already increase of 600. It was instant. It's
Yes.
literally less than 400 milliseconds. So
Wow.
that's the first thing. Transactions on Sui are literally instant. Users will not experience any lag with transactions on Sui. It is very, very unique to the ecosystem and the consensus algorithm. The next thing is we've got some Sui. I already said that I hate the idea of domain name. I hate the idea of usernames, of using long-winded addresses. What if I could just buy a domain name, for example? So I'm going to sign in with my account. I'm going to buy a name called, let's call it Show and Tell.
And where are we doing this right now?
So this is a website called suiNS.io.
Okay.
So this is a domain name system that is universal across the Sui ecosystem. And you can buy a domain and immediately attach it to your account. So I'm buying a domain for 20 Sui. And in buying the name, I'm setting it as my default account already. So here we are. So instantly, I've got a domain. And if I refresh, you see it's now Show and Tell.
Wow. Okay.
So now my wallet is saying Show and Tell, basically. So if I want to send money to Show and Tell, all I need to do is go to my wallet again. I'm going to send, this time, just one Sui at Show and Tell. Done. Never have to remember a complicated username ever again. So, okay, I've shown you that you can create a domain name.
Is it in there now?
It's there. It's already there in the
Oh.
wallet address. Yeah. So we got 580.99. I just sent one Sui. So it's already in the wallet instantly. So we've shown that we can buy a domain name, register it, and instantly forget the fact that we ever had to worry about these annoying long addresses again. That's a UX. Next thing, I touched on the fact that, you know, this is wallets, right? Like I already told you that wallets are the worst thing ever created. What if I don't have to, I want to onboard into an application and I don't want to ever have to worry about wallets? Well, we have something for that. So this app is called Stashed. It was actually built in like a couple of days, and anybody can build this app in Sui because it's a layer 1 primitive. You don't need a middleware to make this happen. I'm just going to sign in with my Google account. So I've signed in. It's asking me to create a username. So I'm going to call this one Show and Tell as well. So it's Show and Tell on Stashed, which is a domain name. So I've now signed in. I've got a username called Show and Tell at Stashed. So I can actually send money from my Show and Tell account. Let me send 200 Sui to Show and Tell at Stashed. Review, send. So if I refreshed, you see the money's already there. So now I'm in a world where I don't have to worry about domain names and I don't have to worry about long-winded addresses anymore. I'm simply just sending funds using nothing other than, you know, addresses, which is very, very Web 2. This is something that allows you to use Sui without the concept of wallets. But let's say I also want to do a swap now. I'm going to go to Hop Aggregator. I'm going to sign in with my Stashed account I just created. It's going to click on approve. No wallet download required. I'm going to swap 20 Sui for Blub. Okay? Click on approve. Right, did not work. Let's try again. There we go. 0.86 seconds transaction.
That's very fast.
Yeah. So the final thing I want to show you is something called SuiNS. So you have, this is an NFT that I have. It's actually, you know, this is the NFT. This is a shirt that the NFT has. And this is a snorkel that NFT has. So this is the element of showing you Sui's composability. Everything is an object. You can merge objects together. You can decompose the object. I'm just going to connect to my wallet right away. So Sui wallet, I've connected to the wallet, and I can click on so this is my NFT as we see. You see I've got a shirt. I've got the snorkel as well. I could try it on. So I could choose to put one thing on or off directly. So imagine a game you're playing. You want to compose your character right away. I'm going to save the changes, approve, done. So if I go back to my wallet, I only now have one NFT because
We've manipulated the NFT.
Correct, in real time, and it's saved instantly on chain. This is the only place this is possible because of the object model. Users don't have to worry about the concept of, hey, burn an NFT, lose all the history. So if I look on a block explorer, I'll be able to see this asset has been composed a number of times. So if this asset was owned by Steph Curry, for example, right, I'll be able to see Steph Curry was the one that constructed this asset directly, which means it has a lot more interesting value than just an asset created by me. So having the entire history of an asset or the lore around an asset is very, very important. It's because that's how the real world is really modeled. I want to know who's touched it. I want to know who's used it. I want to know the history about it. This is available on chain without having to do complicated burning. And the final thing I would show you, and I know this is a lot of demos, is actually
the demos are great. I think a lot of people are visual, and really getting to make the thing tangible and interact with the thing is just really useful. This is
absolutely. These are the kind of things that we think matters to user experience. And in this scenario, right, like I've got 10 SWI that I want to convert to ETH and then put that into a lending pool. In other ecosystems, I need to do the swap first. Once I do the swap, then I've got to do the transaction to move it into the lending pool. With SWI, one click button, I click on one button and it does both. So it's not only just done that, it's now swapped it and put it into a lending pool. And now I have a position in the lending pool that is ETH just by swapping SWI with one click of a button. It did multiple transactions. And if you go to Aftermath, for example, right, they would show me in this scenario, you see I've selected one SWI. One USDC gets me more SWI on Aftermath because they're able to dynamically find the best optimal route for a trade. Now, imagine each one of these swaps is a different intent. I want to buy a concert ticket. I want to swap that concert ticket for some dollars, and that dollar I want to do, pay for my next holiday as a result of that. So every user intent is separate, and it can be done in a single transaction. This is very, very unique to SWI, and we don't believe any other ecosystem, because of the way the blockchains are built, doesn't afford you the ability to conjure up this kind of intent in a way at scale. So SWI is very, very fast. It allows you to transact in ways that are very natural, single-click approvals. Automatic approvals are coming soon. So if you trust an application, you can simply say, just approve transactions for me on my behalf and don't have to worry about approvals. But we think that's where you bring Web 2 users to Web 3. You do not ask them to meet you on your own terms. You don't ask them to download ridiculous wallets. You don't ask them to remember username, remember long account addresses. You don't ask them to pay gas. You effectively onboard very, very simply. Like when I showed you the wallet for Stashed, the Stashed wallet effectively did not ask me to pay any gas. It's all handled in the back end for the user perspective. So that covers the demo. Hopefully that was very, very, that helped show you the vision of what we're trying to achieve.
Yes, and now I certainly I'm using an outdated wallet. I definitely need to get a new wallet for my SWI, that's for sure. So what happens? What do you need to remember? What if you go on Safari and you're like, wait, I thought I had some value somewhere. What do you need to remember to be able to access that value?
Just that you have an email account with Google. If it's Google you use to store value, that's all, nothing more. Wow. If you use Twitch, if you use Facebook, log in with whatever account you already have. As soon as you're in, your values there. And because these primitives are built into the actual chain, it makes it super composable and makes it very, very, it's something that you can really build around. Like you can build multi-sig. For value of $100, fine, I'll just use my Google account. But anything over $100, maybe I use my Google account and another 2FA mechanism. So you can really start to conjure the traditional Web 2 concept around security with users, not ask them to buy a device, a hardware device. Every time I used to do ETH transactions, I have to click approval. My heart would be bumping just because of the pain and worrying about things going wrong. So, I think up-leveling the experience to Web 2 experiences and giving the benefit of ownership is something SWI uniquely does.
And and then there's the speed, right? That I remember sending things like years ago, in a half an hour you're about to cry because you're not sure that if you left that like sent value into the ether forever. So yeah, look, it sounds like you guys have built and are continuing to optimize a blockchain that is meant to be like a pleasure to use. And that, again, in our view, for us thematically, abstraction, user experience is a huge stepping stone for mass adoption in the space.
It's certainly why we're seeing a lot of institutional interest in what we're building, and a lot of consumer brands interest as well, because they've tried multiple things before where at scale these things just fall over, or they have to create new kind of form of interactions between how users experience the blockchain directly with their application. Now we're saying forget all that. You simply build your app as you build as you're building it today. Just integrate it with your login mechanism, and you're fine, and you're good to go. Users effectively now have the concept of ownership. You don't have to tell them about addresses. You don't even have to tell them it's a blockchain, but you arm them with the ability to send value from app to app, or from wallet to wallet, or from address, name and address to name and address. And that's very natural, actually. Right? I use app mechanisms to send emails today. I'm going to use app mechanisms to send value across all ecosystems moving forward.
And that's, so because of that, hopefully the next generation of users that are onboarded will not have to have the fun experiences of losing their seed phrases or thousands of dollars doing transactions on chain. Let's pivot. Let's talk about the token.
Sure.
Let's talk about the token. How does it fit in? How is it used? Talk to us about sort of supply, demand.
Yeah, I could talk to you about Sui supply and demand, and also the token mechanism. So Sui is a token that is, the utility of Sui token is for paying for gas, so the fees for transacting on the network. It's for staking, namely providing security to the network, and you earn the reward for your process transactions as part of a stake, as a staker. Separately, it's also for storing data, used for as an escrow for storing data. So unlike other blockchains, when you store data, other blockchains are very, very expensive to store data on. To store a megabyte on Sui is 100 times cheaper than on Solana, and it's like 2,000 times cheaper than storing on ETH. So you can actually store data on Sui. So if I want to we have NFTs on Sui where the entire image is on Sui, 4K image resolution are stored on the blockchain, not some arbitrary third-party system that may or may not be there. The actual objects and the actual data is on chain. So whenever you store data on Sui, you pay a storage fee, and that storage fee stays locked up while that state is interesting. So the more interesting data gets stored on Sui, the more Sui gets locked up in a way. So it's almost it's semi deflationary in that regard. So as you have more and more data stored on blockchain, more and more Sui is taken out of circulation. So you use Sui for paying for transaction fees. You also use it for paying for storage, while also staking Sui as a validator. It's a delegated proof of stake system that allows you to basically earn as a validator by staking with a validator of your choice. Ultimately, that is how the Sui tokenomics works. There's something called a storage fund, where all the funds for storage that has been paid by every user is stored. And let's say a year's time, today Sui is $1.70, and maybe in 2 years' time, Sui is $10. But guess what? That NFT is not worth what I paid for back then. I can destroy that NFT and get a rebate of 99% of that asset. So you're incentivizing removing data that's not of value anymore in the long term, and then I get a rebate of the funds that I stored maybe 2-3 years ago. So it's designed as it's a really well thought out tokenomic system that we've not seen anywhere else. It was designed by our chief economist Alonso de Guattari. It's an amazing mechanism.
So we talked about gas again. We were also talking about how a lot of that's abstracted away. Can you talk a little bit more about, because all the many blockchains use gas. In the case of Sui, how is that aspect abstracted away from the end user experience that we were exploring when you did the demo?
So there's something that anybody can run as infrastructure called a gas station. So I, as a service provider, can decide to run a third-party service and say, hey, I'm open for business. You just pay me by credit card or pay me by USDC, forward your transactions to me, and I'll sign them, right? So the user can sign their transactions, but someone else can pay for it. So as a user, wallets can decide to say, hey, if you trade in X and Y dexes, you never pay gas. So you introduce Web 2 models of partnerships to enable users to not have to worry about the concept of gas. We believe most users would not have to pay gas, right? Like it's something that an app will pay on your behalf, or third party will pay. Maybe they'll show you an ad, and then all your gas is free ultimately. But generally, it's something that's optional from a user perspective. Now, if I want to be fully degen and I want to transact myself, I don't want to go via any third party, I don't want to use any gas station, you could do that. You can absolutely do that. And just like I showed, you could use a paraphrase account on Sui. You have full optionality. But we believe 4 billion, 5 billion people in the world are not going to use those mechanisms, right? So we built Sui for the 4 billion people that exist, not for the few that are in Web3. So if you want to do degen things, you could absolutely do that, but you have a mechanism to onboard the masses at scale with Sui.
So speaking of onboarding the masses, what do you think are the near or intermediate term use cases and things that are being built that are really going to result in that onboarding and mass adoption?
So the biggest potential for mass adoption in Web3 is going to be gaming. And we actually believe that gaming will supercharge DeFi to a scale we've never seen before. And one thing we like to measure is capture rate in our ecosystem. It's how many people are using 2 or more applications in the ecosystem. Because it's great to have an app that does things by itself. It's very insular, right? But you want an application that drives people to multiple. And we're starting to see that spike up in Sui, which means there's more interesting things for consumers to do. Gaming, last year, something like 3.3 billion gamers spent $200 million on games, $200 billion on games last year. That is a massive user base. And we're onboarding a lot of game studios who already have games that have 100 million users, 2 million users, 3 million users. So we believe the amount of usage you'll get in the ecosystem will come from gaming, specifically with these amazing mechanisms we've developed in Sui. Now, these games are going to need users to swap in-game assets for fiat, or we're going to need users to swap NFT X for NFT Y, or in-game asset X for in-game asset Y. What is going to power that? The DeFi primitives that have been built in the ecosystem are absolutely going to power that. So today, you're finding DeFi is used mostly by users on the first party when they're going to a website and they're transacting directly. We believe the mass majority of users will never use DeFi in that mechanism. It's going to be an integration with a multitude of DeFi mechanisms that exist today. So as a user, I do not care that I'm trading on Turbos. I do not care that I'm trading on Aftermath. I'm just trading. I'm swapping a sword for $5, or I'm giving you a sword. I'm giving you $5 and you give me a mask or something else, or skin. And we think that's going to be what's going to power DeFi at scale. So we believe that with Sui and the strategy we've adopted, there'll be way more general mass adoption with Sui than traditional blockchains, just because the friction isn't there. And you don't have to worry about gas fees spiking. Dollar fees for Sui for gas over time will end up being flat because of the way the tokenomics has been designed. So even if Sui goes up 5x, with the algorithms we're bringing in, would allow you to basically peg the cost of gas to a dollar amount ultimately.
Great. So we have only 5 minutes left. I want to be judicious. I want to take some of these questions that have come in from investors. There's a couple questions that are related, so I'm going to combine them. Can you talk to me about how Sui is different from Aptos and how the exposure is different from Solana? Like maybe a little just what are the differentiators?
So the first thing is, so Sui, people confuse the things. So Sui and Aptos are 2 different teams that were at Facebook. Mm-hmm. Our team were predominantly responsible for building all the research and all the science behind launching the blockchain, which is why when we left Facebook, we decided not to use our own code, but build something new, because we knew we'd built this thing very, very quickly to get to market, to ensure it met regulatory compliance. So when we left Facebook, we decided to re-engineer everything we had learned and built a brand new platform. And that's why you see the velocity of development is way faster, because we don't have a lot of tech debt that we have to take care of. Aptos is basically the Libra infrastructure that we built at Facebook and have made a lot of amazing, interesting updates since then. We believe what we built here is a lot more is a lot more interesting, because we've not inherited a lot of the mistakes that were made at the time of development at Facebook. So it's way more scalable. It has a lot more developers than Aptos by quite a margin, just because the onboarding experience into building on Sui is not the same as Aptos or ETH. In fact, the developer experience in building on Aptos is very similar to Solana in that regard, right? So it's a game shift. I believe one of the top devs in the Sol ecosystem built Sui-Lend actually said it's a 10x developer experience in building on Solana and Sui. So if I had to compare Sui to Solana, Solana is actually a great platform. We're big fans of what they've done for the ecosystem, and they keep on making strides.
So the theme of experience keeps coming up. So I'm going to pick another question that is sort of based on the experience that developers have. How difficult do you think it is? You're using different programming languages. How difficult do you think it is for developers to switch amongst them?
So what we are witnessing actually in real terms is developers are taking anywhere between 4 hours to 4 days to learn Move and to be able to write an application and publish an application that is very, very useful. Because if you're coming from a traditional programming language that is object-oriented, Sui doesn't deviate too far from that. So that concept of account is not something you have to worry about. Like, that's a new thing you have to learn, which is why it's very, very hard to pick up other platforms. Sui is very, very natural for devs. So there are over 9 million JavaScript developers today, and only something like 20,000 active devs in the Web3 ecosystem. We're going after those 9 million plus JavaScript developers, which is a way, way larger market than just the ones in Web3. I think today, Sui Move as a whole represents close to 6 or 7% of all devs in Web3 ecosystem. So it's already growing relatively fast. And we think come this time when we have another Electric Capital update, Sui will be showing significant increases again. It was actually one of the fastest growing dev ecosystems back in the last report, and I think it's going to show the same again. But ultimately, dev experience is something that we completely are very focused on, and that's what really sets Sui apart from other ecosystems.
So again, experience and that concept of meeting people where they are, whether it's developers or just consumers interacting with the chain.
Well, if you're building a dev platform, you need to think like, who's a dev building for? Devs are building for consumers and businesses, and those are human beings. So they need to be able to onboard those users in as easy as possible way. So we started from who are the users, and then who are the devs, and all the ways, okay, let's build a platform that allows devs to service users, where I feel most infrastructure today in Web3 is built infrastructure for infrastructure, right? Not for, it's taken back. We've taken a very product-centric approach to building infrastructure, which is what we're very, very used to. We've been building infrastructure for decades.
Well, so we're at time, unfortunately, but this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. And thank you, everybody, for dialing in. I hope that everyone has a good rest of their day and rest of their week.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.